The following is a special presentation of XCW.
XCW Inception after a long hiatus show-wise, jumping all the way from July with Greed to October 3rd, 2004.
Yeah, last episode we kind of learned why there was that layoff. And
what blew my question I was going to ask the boss. And I can't ask
he already answered it.
I can't ask it now. It'd be repetition, and repetition ain't cool. This was also the first and, as far as I know, the only show the New Era Wrestling guys would be in attendance, to say the least, burying the bloody hell out of everybody on commentary.
Oh my, that was awful.
For me, this show didn't hit as hard as the last one. This show didn't hit as hard as Greed.
Definitely Greed was, and like you said, at that point it was the big show.
Yeah.
So
obviously,
it was hard to come off a big show like that and
not have
a layoff of some sort.
Well, I mean, and technically they didn't have a layoff. They still had the untelevised event.
Yeah.
But
we can't inequality.
Yeah. The show starts off with a classic E Lucifer Eternal Darkness. Put the two masked characters on first, let them have some fun. Then it goes into Zero and Hazard, which Zero making his debut, at least on-screen debut. Then an Intercontinental title match, Fatal 4-Way, Psychor, DTC, Vapor, and Cynical. Cynical being the current champion. Obviously, Peep Show earlier showed Cynical as the Intercontinental and the World Champion. Fletch versus Vapor, and then the main event being Cynical versus Azrael Knight in a street fight for the XCW Championship. Big matches on the horizon for these guys. Yep. Which one do you think is going to be match of the night?
Let's see. If I were just to look at it, I'd probably go with that Fatal 4-Way. My name's alone.
Names alone for me,
which
Fletch
is
and Vapor.
Generally me.
Yeah. Names alone, Fletch and Vapor are going to take it. But I guess we'll find out after the evaluations and after we give our star ratings right after this short commercial break.
Let's go. Can't stop me, can't stop me. 궤도를 다 뒤집어. Get ready, dreaming area. Get ready, dreaming area. Can't stop me, 나를 이끌어봐. 떠나 자유롭게 가자 far away. 나나나나, here's an area. 나나나나, here's an area.
And starting us off hot, E Lucifer and Eternal Darkness.
Yep. ED being the power champion at that point. the New Era mention you made, they were burying them alive on commentary.
Yeah.
And then came out and decided to get physically involved and
still lost. Lucifer getting that random wild ass pinfall 24/7 in your new 24/7 XCW I-97 75 South champion. Lucifer
power champion.
Well, no, he didn't win the power title on this show. No. He would have if the title was on the line.
But
he got in the match. Funny enough, though, the guy that lost to Lucifer now works for WWE. So, big things coming out of XCW at that time.
Yes.
Totally not any good though. Like the match was awful. Like
it's my mini 0.5.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. I had it as a solid 0.5. The highlight
really
of
was
this,
like, you take the commentary, this is a on point, and the tech. Not a bad match, but
Lucifer looked like a star coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the kryptonite crunch, the sunset flip. Lucifer is out here doing crazy shit in this match, and everything else just took away from it. I mean, Lucifer looked like the star coming out of that with a 0.5 though. Like there just isn't anything there for me. The next match, however, had a little bit of juice to it, a little bit of sauce with a Falls Count Anywhere match, seeing Hazard and Zero going one-on-one.
Just nice back and forth hardcore match was like my main note on this. Just nice, solid hardcore match.
It was also the first on-screen appearance of Mama Fletch. She made her on-screen debut.
Yes.
Brutal.
Part of the question.
Oh, is it a part of the question? Well, I guess we'll have to ask that later. Brutal looking shots between those two. Zero getting the surprising victory in the match. I was not expecting Zero to get a win. In fact, I have it written here that Zero's win kind of fell out of nowhere. It didn't feel like that should have been the finish.
I wouldn't say it fell out of nowhere, because I usually, if it's a wonky finish, I don't have them in my notes, so I must have been okay with it.
Couldn't have been out of nowhere.
But so like I said, I like the back and forth.
It was a very solid. It was a very solid match. Obviously, Zero getting the win. I had it rated as a 1.5.
I was surprised by that.
I had it rated as a 1.5 star because I was genuinely. It would probably been a 2 star had it felt like there was any kind of build for Zero to get that win over Hazard. Obviously, Hazard.
So I had it at 2.
Hazard right there, big guy, big person on the scene already. For Zero to get that win with no build to it, at least not that we knew of a build to it, just kind of fell flat to me. Gave it the 1.5 star. It was a solid matchup though. But that brings us to our intercontinental. Always want to say international. Intercontinental Championship contest. Fatal 4-way, seeing Cynical defend against Vapor, DTC, and Psychor. A match that was set up earlier in the night on the Peep Show.
It was right before this, the segment before.
And I actually have a question for the boss later on about that Peep Show. The only note I had about it though was that the microphone sounded like ass. Like the microphone that they were talking into, you couldn't understand what they were saying. And that really took away from the Peep Show. Not that the Peep Show is something that gets evaluated or rated, but it just, the best part of that microphone is when it's getting spun around by Fletch. But I actually made a very, very strong note about it, especially given the thing going on in modern day XCW. This is the first on-screen mention of EBW. Throughout the entirety of Chris Jones's time in XCW, this was the only time that EBW had been mentioned on screen.
I did not make a note of that.
It's also the only.
History.
It's It's also the only second ever Fatal 4-Way televised match for XCW. And in my opinion, this Fatal 4-Way blew the first one out of the water because they weren't tagging in and out. It was just a Fatal 4-Way match.
Yes. I was pleasantly not confused by it. And
It was pure chaos, and I loved it. And that's what I wrote.
There was this one like about 3-segment bit where it's like the guys, I can't remember, I didn't note it down, but there were 2 in the ring, 2 outside, and like, holy shit spot in the ring, holy shit spot on the ground followed, and it was beautiful.
Speaking of holy shit spots in this match, the stop signs weren't followed. DTC broke the law. He didn't stop at the stop signs. He went through the stop signs like that. Stop sign, DTC goes through it. It was nasty. I wrote DTC didn't stop. I also feel like that human table spot would have been brilliant had anybody stayed still enough for it to work. And obviously on the mattresses, when one person moves, someone else is going to move, and there's mattresses on the patio, so it's a little harder to balance everything out like that. But I feel like that human table spot would have been amazing.
Yeah, it just I really actually like this match quite a bit. I mean, it's not a perfect match, but I do have it at 3.5.
The person who's editing this is going to hate me for this one. I had it rated at 2 3/4 stars. It was a very, very good matchup in my opinion. I didn't ask you in the beginning what you thought the match of the night would be. Going off of names alone, I feel like it. No, I did. Yeah. You said it was this match. I backtracked on myself a little bit. DTC being the forgetful. DTC, your memory's rubbing off on me, man. DTC being the second out, with Vapor being the first eliminated in the match. Goes back to my comment of the night. We haven't done one. We didn't do one last show, but I got one for this show. Cool battle hat. Gotta love the battle hat. Psycor walking out, your new intercontinental champion, in a 2 3/4 star matchup. Genuinely a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. I figured it was just going to be a lot of chaos, but it actually felt like they thought this match out a little bit.
Yeah, the chaotic parts were, it seemed, like I said, that bit where it's just, each of the guys, okay, we're going to do this spot, now we're going to do this. It's like, I was like, wow, they're actually communicating, or just brilliant, because, I was like, okay, you're not watching the other guys, and like you said, chaos, but good chaos.
Speaking of good chaos, that brings us to our next matchup, which is Fletch and Vapor. Fletch coming out mocking Blade with the entrance. Made me wonder if Fletch was shooting. Obviously, I'll ask him about that later. Vapor coming out with the Vince McMahon walk, looking like he got a corn cob stuck up his ass. NPG and VK2 going to war again in this matchup. It's the first matchup throughout the night that I'm sitting there like, okay, MPG, VK2, this is definitely what they're honing this match for, is to get that rivalry over. Even though we did get to see a little bit of Blackout Inc. earlier in the show with Hazard, Blackout Inc. still not really coming into the scene of the gang warfare yet.
It's definitely MPG and VK2's story right now.
I actually had this match saying it was super slow and kind of felt lost without commentary.
Whenever I think it's a running theme with Inception is that Fletch is in the match, we don't get commentary, and it does lose a little something. Some of the spots though in this match,
amazing.
There's a frog splash in there that was like, well, let's get a spatula.
Well, that's why it's in the intro.
And Suicide Pact, that was really nice. Just so many good spots in it.
Now, I heard a rumor about that suicide effect that I'm going to have to ask the boss about later. I
had that segment.
I had a question about this match, and it was, where was the 10 count? Because at the end of the match, you saw Fletch's hand raised, but the camera cut. And I'll ask Fletch about that later, about what happened with that, and like why the ending of the match is pretty much gone. I had it rated at a solid 2-star. I feel like had the camera cut not happened and there been some sort of commentary to drag it on, it probably would have been a solid 3.5 star match. But it just, without that, it knocks it down for me to a 2-star.
Yeah, that's where I had it at a 2, and knocked down for basically the same reasons. Yeah.
But that brings us to our main event. Cynical, Azrael the Demon Knight, R.I.P., in a street fight for the XCW Championship.
Once again, one of those matches, I've got like maybe 3 notes, and they're just little 2 or 3 word quips because I didn't want to look away. My first note, so good.
You know what did look away? The tape at the end of the match.
Well, true that.
Looked away permanently.
Yes, it did.
The match ending on a time limit draw, according to the text pop up at the end. Obviously, if you're watching the YouTube version, that's where you'll see that at. Double arm DDT looked stiff as hell in this match.
There were so many spots.
They were killing each other in this one. There were a lot of random camera cuts though. Like, obviously, maybe that's what led to the camera not working towards the end of the match. But like, there were multiple jump cuts that took away from some spots that looked like they would probably be killer to catch on camera, but old technology, old equipment. I had it listed as these two are going hard, and that Azrael Knight just keeps murdering Cynical. There's a lot of Azrael Knight, or as the NEW commentators would dub him, Captain No Cell, which they've obviously never watched a DTC match because I think he earns that title through and through. I do have a question for the boss about this match and why he announced Cynical the way he did.
Yeah.
Sin Ecole. No, his name's Cynical. Don't you announced him as if he had 3 separate names in it. It just didn't work for me, boss. It didn't work for me, brother. I had this rated as a solid 2-star contest.
Yep. I had it at actually I have that at 2.5.
2.5 star. That's bold.
Yeah.
That's a bold rating.
Yeah. It probably with
I mean, we did get to see a Muda lock in this match, which was really cool.
Yeah,
and it was beautifully executed too.
Yeah, a couple of different cork submissions like that. Ooh.
I mean, I know a lot of times you watch people do submissions in the yard, especially back in this time where nobody really cared. And a lot of times the submissions look sloppy or poorly executed, but that Muda lock looked beautiful. Yeah. Obviously 2-star. What was something you learned from this show, going through and watching all these?
Goodness, what did I learn? Well, I'd hate to say it, but that long layoff kind of showed. Pacing wise, I think in the show was shoot.
Because I know I learned something.
What did you learn?
I learned that you should never invite the new era guys to watch your show.
That probably is a good lesson.
I never invite the new era guys to watch your show, at least not when you're wrestling on a porch, because they're just gonna bury the hell out of you. I also learned that don't trust whatever camera they were recording on for this show, because that some bitch wasn't cooperating. That was the shootiest of shoots throughout the entire show was the camera. The camera was shooting on everybody, brother. But speaking of shooting on people, we're gonna shoot with the boss about this show right here, October 3rd, 2004, after this commercial break, where we have Fletch in the hot seat asking and answering all.
Camera, swallow the dagger, cut off the ones who disobey. Follow the leader into the fever, one by one until we break. Smile for the camera, swallow the dagger, cut off the ones who disobey. Follow the leader into the fever, one by one until we break.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to XCW's Inception. We're back October 3rd, 2004, the 8th show that we've looked at here on Inception, and the 8th time that you, sir, have sat in the hot seat.
I ain't scared.
It's funny you're wearing an EBW shirt since this was the first on-screen mention.
Funny,
Of
this is
EBW.
actually the original EBW shirt. That's why it looks so ragged. But this is legit, like, from 2013. So, just a little fun fact.
Ran more ragged than the NEW guys on commentary. So,
Or some of Lloyd's ex-girlfriends. Continue.
So, first matchup, Lucifer Eternal Darkness.
Before we get to that, there's actually a lot going on prior to this, and I wanted to give a little context, and then we can go through this individually. So, SummerMania 2, unfortunately, was not televised due to all the camera issues, stuff like that. I want to run down that card a little bit, just give you guys a little bit of context. So, it would end up Lucifer versus Psycho Circus Clown, which would have the Power Championship contendership on the line, which would eventually lead to Lucifer and Eternal Darkness having the two matches that you see in this show and in the next show. So that brings you a little context to what's going on and why these guys are starting the show. We also had Zero debut at SummerMania. So I actually was a part and ran a company, I guess pretty much as a freaking toddler. I was so little. We called it BPW, Backyard Porch Wrestling, which is actually what gave us the idea to compete in this season on the porch was the fact that I had a giant back patio that I used to wrestle on as a kid. And a little context, Zero was part of BPW, and he is actually the real life brother of DTC.
I got my family wrong.
Yeah, so
I knew it was one of them.
So bringing Zero in as a surprise to go against DTC, which he defeated DTC. DTC needed something that he could bounce off of, and so we referred to the match a lot as these guys are very familiar with each other because of the BPW days, but we think that there's more to it that we don't know, which you don't find out until the 2005 season about them being related. Also on the SummerMania card, it was Azrael the Demon Knight versus Ratitude. Azrael and Ratitude in real life legitimately hate each other.
Oh, wow.
And so this was a blood feud. This was a total shoot, and I just actually let these guys beat the shit out of each other. And it was a squash. Azrael killed him. Also on the card, Ryan Wet Dream Riggs returned, wrestled Biohazard. This was to set up for Ryan Wet Dream to eventually go against Spitfire. As you'll see coming up in the future shows, Spitfire wasn't long for this world, and neither was Wet Dream at the time. And you'll see the Cruiserweight Championship kind of fizzle out more and more as the next couple seasons go. Also, Fletch defeated Vapor and Blade, so this was set up as it was supposed to be a four-way with Kurt Acid, Fletch, and then the two members of MPG. Acid's music plays, Acid never comes out, and thus you get the triple threat of the two MPG members beat me down. But some miscues led to me getting the W in the triple threat. And then the main event, Cynical, Chris Jones in a trunk match. So this is the very first trunk match in XCW history. Cynical is going into this match as the Intercontinental Champion already, as he won the title prior to SummerMania in a non-televised show. So it's actually champion versus champion for both championships. Though Cynical and Chris are damn near flawless when they wrestle each other, and their stories and their ability together mesh so unbelievably well. This was the worst match both of these guys have ever had, ever, and by a long shot, the worst SummerMania main event ever.
Good thing it wasn't on camera.
So I just thought I would add a little context to SummerMania that kind of gets you to this point, so you're probably going to have a little bit of understanding about this show, because of course, camera was the big issues during this period of time.
And it's funny that cameras are a big issue, because the XCW archive was kind of getting cleaned out the other day, and I was sitting there looking at some old still photos, and there's actually a picture that used to be in a scrapbook for XCW of Hazard standing there with this chonky brick of a camera.
With Garland on him?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can actually send you the picture if you want.
I know the picture.
I was gonna say, if you want to be able to show the people what they were trying to film on back then, just a little more history of the brick that you had to carry around to record on.
Shoot, I remember those old timey camcorders.
And not only that, so it's a high 8 tape. It's got the bulky screen, and then you push a button on the top, and then the front opens up. That's where the tape goes in, and then the actual part where you film had a hand part, and you could turn this to move the camera up and down, and the battery, the old like Nintendos where the battery pack on it's like this. Like it's huge.
Yeah,
so like if it was plugged in or something, like that person couldn't like just drag that around to get the shots. So this was the first job in XCW of Emily Morris. She literally was the battery pack holder for the cameras during this period of time. So that's
kind of.
I have the little jobs get the big jobs done.
That's right.
So speaking of little jobs getting big jobs done, you're the little job of your mother, and this was the first on-screen appearance for your mom on camera. What made her just walk out and start yelling at people?
Well, first off, Hazard had come through and it was, we're teenagers, so we drive like madmen, of course. Mm-hmm. And he sped through the trailer park, and my baby brother, as we would later know as Colton Kravitz, was out playing that day and was cutting it a little close to old Hazard's car. So she had to come over and light the big guy up. She also came over to take out the dog. Let's be honest. Okay. If you notice, when she walked back through the picture, she has a very small teacup dog over there. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
I like the whole sweatshirt, hat, and the hair thing. Like, good look, Mom. not really. You look ridiculous.
So after
she watches these, so she watches our channel. So she Mom, you look ridiculous. She's a future XCW Hall of Famer. I don't care what anybody says.
0 Hazard, Falls Count Anywhere. That was the match where your mother made her on-screen debut. That preceded a peep show.
You skipped the first match.
Do you want to talk about how?
I want to talk about everything.
How buried these guys got on commentary?
Do you not want to know why New Era was even there?
I was gonna get to that, but sure. Why was New Era there? What led to that?
So, of course, New Era started in 2002, and one of the people that really kicked off New Era, actually, New Era wasn't even New Era Wrestling to start. It was MCW, Midwest Championship Wrestling. One of the guys that helped jumpstart that company and get it on its feet was this guy named Keith Rock. Keith Rock is my legitimate uncle, my brother's dad, or my dad's brother, and also the father of a guy that some of you may know is Onyx. So that's a little context. So I was always closely associated with New Era in the early days, and it's not like New Era is now where it's ran by someone else. It was ran by the Van Zants, the same guys that I had issues with later on down the road, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in regards to Until the End and Glory Reunion. So those were the guys calling the shots, as well as my uncle in the early days of New Era. So I was pretty closely intertwined in knowing all of those guys already. Ironically, there was a New Era show the night before this. This was actually taped on a Sunday. And
bit out of character.
Yeah. So this was taped on a Sunday because of the New Era show the night before. Bobby Black, one of the wrestlers that was on the New Era roster, lived next door, and so Bobby was around a lot and seen a lot of our work, and he had a pretty good relationship with myself and with Chris Jones and DTC and guys like that, especially DTC. So DTC had talked to Bobby that day and was like, we're wrestling today. And so, Bobby stayed at a party the night before. He had this crazy Cruiserweight Championship match on New Era. And it just so happened that Clifton Crunk and Polarius, also known as Drake from WWE, were partying hard with Azrael, and because Azrael was actually living next door with Bobby Black as well. Azrael's like, I'm gonna go kill this guy today with a backboard from a basketball goal, which he did. So that prompted those guys to come over, and so it was very shooty, but at the time, I mean, I didn't even care that they were burying us. And even to this day, I kind of don't care, because two things. One, I got an XCW roster member a legit W over someone at that time was light years ahead of us. And a legit professional getting booked, getting paid to do what he was doing. The second one is that you didn't know what you had at the time, and two things happened with this. Cliffton Crunk would eventually go on to pass away. And so I have some pretty unique footage of a well-treasured wrestler that is no longer living. And I had the opportunity to have him on our camera, drunk as fuck, but he was on the show. And later years, someone who was extremely controversial, Drake Wuertz, known as on the Independents. I'm sure you've heard of him, right?
Oh yeah, I watched it. He wrestled at a show, AWR show I went to.
So Drake Wuertz, very well known. He did deathmatch. He did a lot of things. Very well known guy. Was the other guy that was Polarius, as his name was on there, and to have footage of someone who would be legitimately signed to a WWE contract in later years, to have that footage of early days of him, even if he was shit-faced drunk and beating up my guys, I have that footage forever. I have that. So that was a cool moment in the early days of XCW, where it's not like it is today, where we have independent wrestlers, including myself, that are in and out of the company and stuff like that. Back then, that was unheard of, especially in a backyard. Like, to have name talent like that. Drake Wuertz, who went and had a hell of a career on the independents, and then got signed to WWE, was most notably, known for his time in NXT as a referee there, and before eventually being released for the whole COVID controversy stuff. But to have him on that show and to have him and Cliff do that spot and stuff was just really cool and really set up a very different time. And it also catapulted myself and Chris Jones and Cynical and DTC, all of us, and Hazard, all the opportunity. This was the early talks of us going and getting legitimately trained, which about a year later, I would, in the summer, I would officially join New Era Wrestling's roster as a referee, officially. So a lot of things stem from having those guys out.
Well,
funny note, Drake Wuertz actually got fired from New Era for the spot that he did in the show and losing to a yard guy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which I didn't find out about until I was working for All Star, and one of the Van Zants had told me,
oh my god!
Just so you know, like you got a dude that works at WWE fired on an indie show for him getting beaten by Lucifer. Oops. In his defense, the dude was intoxicated, damn near passed out, so.
It was a shoot pin. So that brings me back to the next match now that we've gotten that out of the way.
I just thought that was important information. So
the no-show that you talked about in the Peep Show from Chris Jones, was it intentional that he no-show? Or did he actually no-show?
So here's the thing, and we'll go back to Zero and Hazard here in a second as well. So you are not going to believe this, especially at this stage of like where we are in this business and as XCW and Chris Jones. You have to put into context that this is 2004. We're in high school.
Oh yeah.
He got grounded.
He got grounded. For burping in a car.
That is amazing. That is
a legitimate shoot. Chris burped in a car, pissed him off, and he got grounded.
For it. Oh my god.
Which is another.
That's just.
There's another tidbit
beautiful.
to that you guys didn't even mention, which I'm kind of surprised you didn't, because you like to tear shit apart. Cynical did not come out with the XCW Championship.
He didn't. He didn't have the belt on his shoulder.
That championship was owned by Stone Cold Tim and Chris Jones, and without Chris Jones available for that show,
we didn't have the belt.
We didn't have the belt. Well, joke's on them, because guess who still owns that belt?
I mean, you don't get rid of anything, so it doesn't surprise me that you still have the belt.
As for the Hazard Zero thing, these guys hit it off really quickly as friends. So this was kind of at the request of Hazard, like, hey, because at this point, Hazard had been wrestling since 1999, in different companies, HCW and SPW and BYWE and all the companies that were around otherwise at the time, Justin's and Hazard's companies.
The first real traveled guy.
Yeah. So Hazard was like, hey, I'm more tenured. Zero's been out of the game for, since 99, 2000. So let me bring him in and get him a big win. Another big pivotal thing about this is this is the first time that we had seen blood on camera since mine and Biohazard's match. So, and that was something, it was more rare. It's more rare now even, but it was super rare back then because we didn't have the money to
3 or 4 times
have fake blood, and then we weren't smart enough to legitimately get it. So
that's, even gigging now is not something you see a whole lot of. A lot of the times people use the fake stuff. So.
Yeah, so the big point of this was that Hazard, a seasoned vet, really wanted to get over Zero, and it actually worked going forward because I think it did a lot for Zero. You're going to hear and talk a lot more about Zero over the next couple seasons.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed the Zero match. I'm looking forward to some of the stuff he does in the future.
Oh, just wait. Some of the stuff you see him do in 2005, there's no reason why a 230-pound guy should be doing nip-ups onto people's shoulders, but it happens.
The part of why I do the Zero tolerance now is because I enjoyed Zero's work.
He was an innovator, for sure.
Brings us to our next match, Cynical Vapor DTC Sidecore for the Intercontinental Championship.
Well, part of this is that Cynical was a double champion, so he had to defend the title as a double champion. Psycor was just on and uphill. Match. Actually, now that I think about it, I forgot to mention it from SummerMania. I guess I glossed over it. There's a triple threat match on the show that's seen Hazard Zero Hazard Eternal Darkness and somebody. I don't even remember now. I'd have to look back. This scene in Eternal Darkness win the championship from Hazard. So yeah, that it all kind of ties in one way or another.
This match is where the first on-screen mention of EBW would come into play. Was there ever a point where you were like, okay, EBW is gonna be something more than what it was then?
No, because then it was a legitimate, separately owned, ran company. This is the first time we really started to branch out and work with different companies. So we had a working relationship with New Era Wrestling. As you'll see later on, a television title would be introduced in XCW. Well, the television title for us was legitimately the Cruiserweight title in New Era.
Oh, wow.
So you'll see a working relationship with us in New Era. You'll see more working relationships with NAW, of course, Stingrays, Wedge Green, Hazard, and then Chris Jones coming into XCW, and he legitimately was running EBW at the time. So that was why the mention was there.
Okay. Obviously, this would only be the second ever Fatal 4-Way match televised.
I'm really surprised that you guys liked it, because I actually think that it was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
See, I really enjoyed it.
I know they did a lot of 2 in and 2 out, and did try to separate so that there was more of a focus on certain things. But come on, even Cynical's battle helmet. You know what those were? It's funny. I don't even know how we got those. They were outer shells, plastic outer shells of bug zappers.
Oh, wow. It's
a cool battle hat.
Yeah.
Though they hurt like hell.
I bet.
Another notable thing from this, I don't know if you guys caught watching it. So there's actually a spot where Sycor's got a piece of wood, and I think he's going after DTC. Cynical's on the top rope and does like this straight up like Sparta kick and kick the piece of wood, just trying to ricochet it back into his face. Cynical's foot legit went through that piece of wood and smoked Sycor in the face. Hilarious. I just wanted to point that out because I thought it was fucking awesome.
Well, this would be Sycor's big win.
Yes.
New champion, new international, intercontinental.
Yeah, I mean,
I win every different one.
You know, Cynical beat Vapor, which is why Vapor's in this match. Cynical's in this match. He's a champion. Vapor's trying to get that revenge on Cynical, plus plays into, you know, VK2 and all that stuff. Blade was supposed to be at this show, which is why, which we'll get to, why I did the Blade entrance and stuff. And that's, Vapor wasn't supposed to be doubled up this show. That's why you see him in the 4-way and then again with me following. Which, there's actually a promo that sets it up. You know, me coming out on that and Vapor, his BMF bullshit walk, whatever. So, but yeah, that's what tied Cynical and Vapor to the match. Sycor just earned the opportunity. You know, he was just a power champion. Now he kind of leveled up into the international title. And so, and then there's DTC, who's in the mix. He was just recently XCW champion. So this is just kind of a way to tie in the two big rivalries of MPG, VK2, and kind of transition to the outside guy of Sycor.
So, was it always planned for Vapor and DTC to be the first and second eliminated and to have Cynical and Sycor be the final two then?
Yes.
Okay.
Just because we wanted to show that Sycor was going to be a guy to stand out on his own and not be a part of this rivalry. And we're also setting up to make Sycor seem legitimate because Sycor is the goal, the end goal for Genocide to face when he returns. To set them away from the mega group battle.
Okay. Obviously, that brings us into our next matchup, which would see you facing Vapor.
I beat the shit out of him.
Yes, you did.
I beat the shit out of him.
That's actually the question I had.
I will beat the shit out of him again, I promise you.
2017 all over again.
Oh,
that was actually my first question about this match. Were you shooting on him at any point?
Absolutely not. We were two of the guys, like he was part of the Elite 8. He was one of the guys that helped me kick off this whole company. And at this point in the game, Vapor and I had worked each other so many times. And then same with Dylan. We'd all worked each other so many times that we just knew what we could get away with. And we're like, let's make, like, the new era guys here, let's beat the shit out of each other. And we did. And we got a reaction. So we got what we wanted.
So
the frog splash was homage to Bobby Black, by the way.
Gosh, that was
So
I put my weight all into that.
Oh, you did.
Back now, if I were to throw a frog splash, I mean, I'd be gentle as a feather. Nah, Vapor, I wanted him to shit his pants.
Go back and watch Birthday Bash. He tried one.
I did actually.
Ate all of the amounts of shit.
Yeah.
On it.
No, I was trying to make Vapor shit his pants, legitimate. Good times. Thanks for being a trooper, Vapor.
Oh, shittles.
Where was the? Did you say Shittles?
That's his nickname.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He has red
like
hair.
Skittles.
Got shit on. Shittles.
They're like Skittles, only nastier.
So what happened with the finish of this match? Because obviously the camera kind of cuts and.
So we come to find out, you know, we're experimenting with the camera. We just begin using the camera that I described at the beginning, which was Hazard's camera, but we're using tapes that we had used throughout the season. And instead of getting new tapes, we were using rehashed tapes when we were filming over other shows and just reusing tapes. Well, eventually, I guess your tapes wear out.
Yeah.
And so they malfunction. So were using old tapes, and then just randomly they like to shut off and come back, and a lot of learning curves as we went. You know, we had the camera with the sound issue, and then we got a new cam, and this one we could plug in. So we're like, oh, we're fucking golden. Well, you know, my broke ass couldn't afford $13 for a 3-pack of 8mm tapes,
and they're still that expensive too.
Oh, they're more expensive.
Like
they went up.
I bought an old 8mm camera at Goodwill because like I like to experiment with old technology.
I still have the 8mm camera. I'll just put that out there.
I like to experiment with old technology and stuff, and I had to hunt down tapes. I couldn't find them on Amazon, couldn't find them anywhere. I found them on eBay, and the person was price gouging out the ass. I think I paid like $30 or $40 for a 6 or 7 pack of tapes.
Weird flex. CVS still sells them.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's okay.
But anyway, so yeah, rehashing old tapes. It'd been filmed over so many times that it just made it malfunction, and so that's why the last 2 matches on the card are very spotty in terms of the camera, and the camera never showed any signs of an error, so we weren't aware of any of it until we played back the tapes, and it sucked too because like it was still there, but it was just so white noised out that it was unusable.
So when we do the retro show, or will we bring that camera back to film the retro show on?
Not a snowball's chance in hell.
Damn. I'll buy the tapes.
No.
Damn. We'll set it up and have it on a hard cam just so we can have the retro show with the retro feel. But
I'm game for that. Actually, little funny context. Vapor and I were texting yesterday, and he, you know, we've been talking about potential plans for 2024 involving Vapor, and he had mentioned to me about, you know, bringing back a retro show, and I told him, I was like, you know, at this point in the game, I think to dub down the production would be a horrible sore thumb, and I don't know that we could pull it off anymore.
I think it could still happen.
I don't think it should.
Especially
since most of the time in the early days, the retro shows took place at SummerMania. To scale down to SummerMania now would make it feel less than.
Oh, yeah.
I think it'd be a cool little thing to put on the All Access channel. Just throw a retro show out and put it on All Access. Cheap plug for All Access. Go watch JWF.
I'm not wrestling in jeans.
You wrestled in shorts in this.
Jorts.
Still shorts. But brings us to our main event.
Oh, you're not going to ask me about the rumor?
Oh, yeah, the rumor. Glad you reminded me. How's your foot?
So I stood, if you actually watch the main event, you see me standing next to Emily in the backdrop as Azrael is absolutely thrashing Cynical's face with a fucking basketball backboard. If you look in the background, you actually see me standing on a bag of ice.
Oh, wow.
So for some fucking reason, and I cannot for the life of me just explain why I wrestled barefoot in the early days of XCW. I don't know why. Didn't want to get my shoes dirty. I don't know what the fuck. So I didn't wear shoes in a lot of these matches, and I gave a suicide effect to Vapor, and there was a nail from us taking bumps and stuff, a nail that had just come up a little bit, just from the wear and tear of taking bumps in the center and it kind of moving those boards. And the right, like where the heel of your foot starts from the middle, it caught right at the top of the heel and ripped it all the way to the front of my foot.
Ouch.
Just where that pallet is right before your toes.
Oh.
So it was that whole thing.
Oh.
Disgusting.
That doesn't sound nice at
Tetanus
all.
shot.
Well, of course.
It was awesome.
I expect nothing less.
It was either that or I was going to have a suicide effect that led to lockjaw. So.
Yeah.
No thanks. Or MRSA.
Fucking MRSA. So, speaking of questionable decisions, why did you announce Cynical the way you announced him for the main event?
So it's actually very simple. I know you're thinking that there's some weird, crazy way that this could be explained. I was making the announcements. Somebody stopped to ask me a question about music in the middle of my sentence. And it just caught me so off guard that I was like, sin. And then they said something to me.
Oh,
and I was
God.
like, Cole. Because like I just was in the middle of doing so many things, trying to produce and run music and do all these things. And so it's not what you think it was.
So when did you guys find out that the footage went completely AWOL for the end of the match?
So back in the day, instead of having the editing software that we had, I had to actually sit with this camera and watch the entire thing transfer to a VHS tape. So you would have the RCA jacks. A lot of the older school VCRs had the RCA jacks in the front.
Yeah.
You would just take the on the camera, it had a little port on the side. You put in the black jack, the like headphone jack, and then the other side would have the red, yellow, white, our AV jacks, and then you put those into the front of the VCR, and then as you hit play, you hit record, and it transfers to the VHS tape. Later years, when we got our next camera, which was after Extreme King 05, you'll start seeing XCW watermark, which the watermark was actually edited on by the camera.
Oh,
because back then, most of the time cameras were used for like happy birthday. So they had pre-done messages on Sony Handycams back then where you could go to the menu and bring up text at the bottom. It'll say like happy birthday or happy new year or stuff like that, or Christmas day and all that. You could edit those texts, and they had two different slots. So I could literally, at the beginning of a match, I could put pause. I can hit pause on the VHS, and it'll pause the recording. Then I could go in there and I can load up on those names. So say the two wrestlers involved are Chris Jones and Cynical. So I can already have those on there, ready to go. So then when I would hit play and record again, they would come out, and at a certain point, boom, hit Cynical, and it would pop up on the screen and say Cynical. Then I hit it again, boom, 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 boom. I had another one that said XCW, and I bring up the XCW emblem again, and then when the next person come out, boom, 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 Chris Jones.
Nice.
So, a little bit of behind the scenes there.
It's a lot of work for nameplates and watermark.
I don't even know if there was actual editing software like there is today then.
I mean, in some capacity, there had to have been.
Yeah, if your name was George Lucas.
I was about to say, it would have cost an arm and a leg and
A lot of
an
equipment.
internal organ or two.
Yeah, semen sample, blood.
Social security
here's
number.
a kidney. Can we have that?
Yeah, so, and especially for a bunch of yard-tard kids that couldn't get jack shit for themselves.
Couldn't afford a steel chair, let alone editing equipment.
Yeah. So, I mean, we worked with what we had, and somehow I made it work with those watermarks and stuff, which, looking back, is absolutely fucking ridiculous, but it worked.
So, what made the decision to end this match on a time limit draw? Like, why a draw in a street fight?
So the truth is, there was no time limit draw. This was a cover-up, and there's no footage to prove it, so it worked. The real thing that happened here is if you watch the very end right before it cuts off, you see Cynical laying next to the ramp on the stage. And Azrael has the stop sign above him, and he legitimately throws it down, and Cynical puts his head up and hits him in the face. That legitimately knocked Cynical out. So when Azrael went for the pinfall, after that spot, he didn't kick out. We didn't want Azrael to be the champion because he was a part-time worker at the time. And we had bigger plans for Cynical and Chris Jones to be the big thing in the fall. And the camera cut anyway. So we never got a legit finish to the match. We didn't know that it wasn't filmed. We were just going to tell people that even though there was a pinfall, that there was a time limit draw that sees Cynical retain the title. But it saved our ass regardless because the camera sucked and it didn't even record it. But regardless of all of that, that was completely fabricated.
Happy little accidents. Happy little fuck ups.
And it's never been told to anyone. So
well, now it's told to the entire internet. So
that's what this show is for.
That's actually really intriguing. I didn't know that. That's a bit of knowledge that you can only find here on Inception.
That's why we do this, to learn these little inside stories of the early years.
You got anything to ask the boss man?
No, I'm good.
I think I dug through a lot. So
we kind of covered all of the bases in this.
One more thing. So Dylan he didn't live in Showville, so him trying to attempt to get to a lot of these shows where it was a little more difficult. You would have to like stay with his grandma, and then Bruce the Truth Basie would have to bring him in for us and stuff like that. And Bruce the Truth was actually our first ring announcer in 2003. So Bruce would have to bring him to the shows and stuff, and if there was something going on, his sister would, they'd have cheer or something or whatever, whatever it was, whatever the scenario was for, him living 30, 40 minutes out, it was a little more difficult for him to make every single show, which is, like I said, why we doubled up on Vapor in the 4-way as well as my match. And, honestly, like, Cynical was doubled up already, but that was on purpose because he had both championships. That's why you see me come out and I'm like shooting on Vapor, wearing his hat and using his music and doing the thing, which Dylan was a total mark anyway. There was a dude named Blade that wrestled for New Era and he was literally just copying him like a dork. So, I mean, for me to make fun of him, it was on fucking purpose.
It's just you being cocky. You being a good guy.
No, it was Dylan making fun of him for being a stupid fucking mark. Dylan, if you're watching this, you were a stupid fucking mark. Anyway, so I come out and, was shooting on him legitimately, which he found funny, and that was kind of it wasn't like to piss him off, it was just a little jab. But the way that we save it, and the reason why, Vapor wrestled me is, of course, that was his MPG brother, and so he comes out and confronts me. You can't make fun of him, that's my friend. And then that's what led to this match.
Only MPG member to be there that day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but there's I don't know if you guys caught it, but there is a promo that leads into the match. He comes out and confronts me. No music, nothing. He just comes out legitimately pissed and wants to defend his friend, and that's what led to the match.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of knowledge being dropped on the ladies and gentlemen watching Inception at home. If you have any questions or concerns or comments for the boss man, leave them in the comment section below and we'll make sure to address them in a future episode. But for everyone here at Inception, that's the boss man Fletch, that's Festus Davis, I'm Jaxsin Law. This has been XCW Inception, October 3rd, 2004, and we'll see you next time when we take it all the way back over 10